All right, folks, we are back. Welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. Great to have all of us back, though, here May 5th, Cinco de Drinko. Great to have all of us, though, here otherwise inside our live trading room. Leda, Margaret, Dan, got Fredlin and Randy, Debbie, got Alan, Mitchell, Lawrence, Michael, Uday, Jeff, Charlene, John S. You can tell I haven't had a drink yet. I'm not mixing up any names. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, though. Great to have all of us, though, back otherwise on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. Please drink responsibly today, Cinco de Mayo. So great to see everyone, though, otherwise at Cyber Trading U popping up on the lower left. If you're new to our streams, new to our platforms, any of our meetings and workshops that we do, just make sure that you hit the follow or subscribe button so you know when we're going live. We're on each and every morning, afternoon, and every Monday. I come on here at 12 o'clock Eastern, do a live workshop, more Q&A breakdown, analysis, reasoning-based workshop. So first and foremost, I have my agenda right here on this other computer. I want to start off, I want to give a beautiful quick shout out to our longtime student, Grant Brockway. Grant, just from the end of last week, I know how to go in for a bit of a procedure. So from last week, all of our students were wishing him well, sending our love to him. But since we're on the YouTubes today and he might be tuning in, wanted to start by giving Grant a beautiful shout out, wishing him well and his whole family there. All right, so with that, let's jump ahead at least. We got this HIMS trade on my screen to start. I'm sure that we'll get into this at some point. It is on my agenda. But I want to go over a question that a student had sent in just before, and it also segues me perfectly to this runner, this crazy thing from earlier today, the GPUS trade. So let me just jump right to my inbox here. Here we go. So Scott sent this in, and it was already on my list here to begin. So Scott emailed me early this morning saying, GPUS looked to have had several entry and exit opportunities this morning. He's still practicing them in his head. He's doing a very good job, might I say. Several veteran traders seem to have hit the mark with this stock. Could you please look at the possible entry and exit points? That would make sense. It still seems to be climbing through reversal time, and that was sent at about 20 minutes ago. Trying to piece together rationale across level 3 and level 4 views. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I finally got a good piece of this trade just before. It was right before we finished up the audio commentary. It was right here off of $4.60. I took a small amount in the grand scheme. I wrote to our students earlier just as it kept going. It's like, yeah, I wish I still had those shares back. That's for damn sure. Listen, if you expect any one stock to make a 400% move just on the whim, you're eventually going to go bankrupt. You're eventually going to blow up your account, or at the least, you're going to blow up profits, expecting way too much when you don't get that. So yes, it's easy to say this is defying expectations, defying logic in a sense, because if you're expecting reversal time at 10:30, well, it clearly broke higher, right? So even after I got out and took a little change, this kept going up more. There could have been room for more here on the stock. So let's go over the rationale at least, because it's easy to tell you, oh, if you jumped in right here and if you sold right here. All right. So for anyone on YouTube right now, that is not how you learn. And that's not how we teach. So you got to focus more on what happens more often than not. So let me ask Margaret, Leda, Carrie, got the ladies in the trading room wishing Grant well right now. Margaret, Kathleen, Leda, etc. And all of us otherwise, Anastasia, got Anna, got all the ladies here, Grant. Jeez, all the ladies love you here today, Grant. You got Fred, you got Dan, you got all of us though here otherwise as well. For a cheap stock like this, what common set of price levels should we be expecting iceberg orders out of? We do this each and every week in Traders Talk because, there is not anything different with our process when it comes to jumping into a trade. There's a lot of moving parts to each trade. So if you missed out on this and it popped too fast for you, that's why we're here. We're here to go over at least what happens more often than not. So the more that we go through this process, it becomes a hell of a lot easier for you to do it on your own tomorrow, next week, throughout this week at least. So everyone answering right away inside our trading room, Barbara, Rick, Leda, Lynn and Randy, Mike, Sam, Margaret, all saying 50-cent levels and whole numbers. And yeah, I mean, even now at this point, you could perhaps now at this stage focus just on those dollar levels, but at least heading into the market open, I would just be focused at 350, 455, and then etc. after that, of course. You don't need to plot a line for every single one of these. Just start off with the ones that are like most near to where the stock is trading. So even here, $3. All right. You can see it held $3 well as support heading into the open. You can see after it broke under 350, well, that should be resistance a bit there. Well, that makes sense. Now, that's how I would want to see the rest of this trade play out, in the simple sense of resistance getting broken back over and then rightfully flipping into support. Same to be said later on at $4 and 450 and yada, yada, yada. So that's where I would initially look to see where those iceberg orders are. And this, again, is all in pre market. This is way before the market's opening up. This was on our pre market watch list, right? It was on our list heading into the open, but you had all morning to figure out where your levels were. Even here, right before the opening bell, it looks like actually right at the price, funky number here, but at the price 405, there seems to be a huge seller out there. So this alone will complement $4 as a key level to work with heading into the open. That 405, iceberg. Let's see here. Let's just go through one or two things. You can see that you have a big spike of volume right at $4. This sticks out pretty sharply. So, hey, with $4 being an assumed level to begin with $4 being, this right here, a CVP level, then on top of that, you have that 100,000+ share seller that stood out at 405. Yeah, I'm absolutely assuming that area to be major resistance heading into the day today, just this here together. Now, what we could do is maybe go back on the daily chart here. Give me a moment. I'll try and do something pretty quick. Try and clear a couple lines at first, but let's go into the daily chart. We know it popped, right? Captain Hindsight speaking. Where do we have clear levels looking at this long-term chart? Is there any area that's holding well as resistance for a long period of time? Not really. This was just straight down from November into this year. I can go back more, but I think this is the type of stock that's been reverse split over and over. None of this is relevant. So when we look at the historical charting, I don't really see much. There's nothing that stands out as much, at least around the fours or threes area. You could say this 286, but that seems like it's kind of irrelevant for the regular session, right? Kind of bounced there perfectly in pre-market. That would have been dynamite entry. That resistance flipped perfectly into support there, but that was pre-market. That was before the opening bell here, right? So let's say you missed that. It ends up popping way higher from there. What's your next step? I can't trust anything that I see on that long-term chart. So going back to this, at least, going back to our original levels here now, the only thing I'll look to do is see where that opening print is by the time the market opens at 9:30, and I'll see if there's anything more to it from there. So I can try and check out time and sales maybe. This is the small one. Probably have to make do with this. That's all right. See what the opening print is. We just went over this in our class just from last week in our phase 2 stock course, basically going over just what that opening print means and at least show it here coming up. Let's see if there even is one that's worth the while. It's a low float stock too, so these low float stocks may not at times have that big block print. Oh, this one does. Okay, makes it easy at least. So right here, right when the market opens, if you see on my window here, whoops, my time and sales window here, you can see about 101,000 shares getting filled right at open at the price 317. So we wait the first 3-5 minutes of the market opening up, not only to see everyone go out there and kill themselves up and down, left and right across the market, wait to see the smoke and dust clear. But point being is that you'll wait also to see this open price. And that could play in part as a key level. It could. So if we were to draw a line there, when the market opened up, obviously we're not jumping in immediately here, but this sure shook around for about 4 minutes, 3 minutes. So if you felt very confident about a breakout, in theory, this could be your first big level. I didn't take this from here. I didn't get in any skin on this trade, at least until 460s. But, once it broke off from here, it needs to flip into support, kind of just laid above it. So that's good enough. But from there, though, rinse and repeat. It ended up breaking over resistance at 350, right? And that was a prior support level. So I find it interesting that it did a great job of flipping this back into support. I'm talking about the 350 level that was holding pretty well earlier as a little support, broke below it. All right, that flipped into resistance right before the, right as the market was opening up here. But from there, Hey, as long as it plays nice, it could break over it and run after, it breaks over resistance. Only after that would I feel that it's more likely for this to try and flip it into support. Hey, what happens if this doesn't pop up the way it does here? What happens if this doesn't make as big of a move off of 350? Well, hey, the more it keeps pressing it as support, it'll break. So it's easy to say, oh, it popped afterwards. Yeah, it is actually pretty easy because we're after the first 5 minutes now. What time's reversal time, everyone, for all of our students here? Leda, Kathleen, Michael, Sam, all of our students live inside our trading room. Again, another question we answer each and every week here because it's all part of the process. 10:30, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that like, oh, 10:30 is when every single stock will reverse within the market. Sometimes it could be a little bit before 10:30. Sometimes it could obviously be a little bit after 10:30. But when you are seeing this flip this level back into support, this is 9:45 in the morning, right? 9:45 Eastern time. It's 10:45 here in Nova Scotia time for Leda, who just wrote me back there. All right, well, really, folks, if we're assuming reversal time to be at 10:30, just 10:30 we'll use. When it's 9:45 in the morning, how much time in theory do we have for this to make a run? How much time do we have here to see this make a run? And Carrie, we're focused right now just on this move right now. This is the only hour throughout the whole week that we're providing education for our students here. So I'm having our focus here. That's all. So let's answer that, Carrie, and Michael and Sam, all of us here. From 9:45 to 10:30, how much time do we have to try and see this stock run? What do we got? We made enough money on this Jeepus trade, Carry, right? All of us here otherwise. A lot of us nailed this stock from earlier, right? But now is the time where we sit back and learn. So we got about 45 minutes, right? The world is our oyster in 45 minutes. The world's in the palm of our hand with 45 minutes when it comes to day trading these stocks, right? We want to see this make a big move shortly after. That's for damn sure. But at the least, we got so much time for this to move up, consolidate. Maybe it doesn't go up as high as it does, and we could still make $1, if not even more, on this trade. We know that we have big resistance at $4 next. Looks like it already started to flip that into support. Look at that. Clean. Pretty clean for the most part. They had one wick here that could have took out stops, maybe, just shooting from the hip with saying that. But point being is that this did a really good job otherwise of flipping this into support, pushing back up again, flipping this into support, right? Now, this is where, again, though, for any stock to go up, 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 two things. A, not every stock goes up perfectly forever across the whole morning into the afternoon. If we say stocks more often than not reverse around 10:30, then exactly how often do we see stocks just keep pushing up perfectly? Even this fell back down. This eventually came back down real hard. So I'm not saying it can't go back up later. I'm just saying for this to be in a perfect move like this, you've got to expect this thing to, fall out of bed pretty hard at some point. So that's the first step. But then otherwise, if you are looking to take an entry, maybe see resistance flip into support. But otherwise, the other part of this is the more that you keep seeing resistance getting poked at, poked at, poked at, poked at in a smaller compression, that's where you feel more likely for the breakout to happen. So the first time it tested $5, no surprise it shook back down. But the more it keeps nipping and testing in this smaller, compression time span here, I had a student say compression. It's been in my head since. But basically, this is doing a great job sticking here. That's what it needs to do. If it doesn't stick here and it just shakes down fast, guess what? More likely than not, this is going to make a lower high, and maybe it takes longer for it to move back up, or maybe it doesn't move back up at all again, right? So, obviously, this did a great job in hindsight, but this did what we needed it to do. After it ran into this again, it didn't just reject, it kept poking it, poking it, poking it. The more that you're patient waiting for exactly that, either A, you're going to see the stock fall off and you wipe your hands clean. Like, all right, well, clearly that didn't continue to nip that level. There are times where error happens and I jump in and then it drops. But otherwise, on the other side of that, I'll also wait too long and the stock will at times pop without me. So you can't time it perfect. But that's just where I wait And then the more it keeps pressing it, I'll feel more confident to try that trade at least. So from 5, it ended up doing great. Hey, you know what? Even a $6, it actually blew right over this as resistance pretty damn easily. Perhaps you would expect more of a little turbulence around this price, around the next dollar level. Just shooting from the hip, there could be an iceberg there. Well, it blew right over this thing pretty unexpectedly, one might say, and it ran. Went up as high as 683 here, right? Once it broke over this resistance, the first test of it pretty much blew right over. Unexpected. It ran up well. All right. Well, real quick, Wendy, Kerry, Roberto, Lynn, and Randy, all of us here otherwise, what are we expecting resistance to flip into right here? Right? So, hey, even though this makes a pretty unexpected pop, wow, it actually tested resistance right away and blew right over it. Maybe I'd expect more of a fight. Well, when it runs up as fast as it does, that's where you instantly flip your head around. You're like, ooh, well, maybe that could be support again. Easy to say that's what happened here on this one wick, but then shot right back up. Look what happened again here. Now it actually broke under and over 6. It doesn't get any sweeter than this, folks. This is as good of a dance partner as you could ever ask for. If you leave money on the table, that's the least of your worries because you do have the chance to evidently get back in on a trade like this. It clearly shows. If you miss this breakout off of 6 and the run up to 8, oh no. Yeah, you got in and maybe like 30 minutes later. You know what I mean? So you can't really cry about leaving money on the table or not jumping in on time. The more that we stress over that and we're not thinking strategically about what to look for afterwards, the more we're pulling our hair out, we're just going to keep missing moves. You know that, right? So that's where at least it's easy to say here from Josh, the instructor, to you, the member on YouTube, or to Fred, Sam, Michael, Carrie, all of us here inside our live trading room. I want you to know I know that it's easy for me to say these things, but the more that we see these trades play out day to day, week to week, month to month. My student Scott that asked me that question, he's been with us for probably like a month and a half, 2 months, Scott, maybe even a bit longer. Time flies nowadays here, right? Can you believe we're already early May in big 2025 right now? It feels like last week we were in January, right? So time's flying. Now for my student Scott, he's been with us for a decent amount now at this point, doing the coaching, sending in questions for Traders Talk. I appreciate that because the more that you see these patterns play out, makes it a lot easier for you to react in the moment, right? So now, as far as what to expect going into this afternoon, that's just where at least we'll focus on the same processes, seeing resistance flip into support. So notice here, it ended up hitting $8 as resistance. Chuck, you see this here? And Lynn and Randy, all of us here, you see how it hit resistance at $8 right here? And then it just dropped. All right, well, from this test at 11:26 in the morning to this test at 12:21, that's almost an hour. That's a lot of time in between this testing resistance levels. But the more it can keep sticking and trying to, nip and test, poke at this level, then we'll see the same thing happen at $8 that happened at, 5. That happened eventually at 6 off support. See the break over resistance, then the hopeful flipping into support. I think if I'm not mistaken, did I say it for this one or was it for the other trade that we were going to go through? No, it was this. So remember I had mentioned actually as I started this review around $3, $4, whatever, there wasn't any good historical level. There was nothing good from 3, 4, whatever. It was only that one pre-market bounce off of this price. That was good. But outside of that, there wasn't anything here I said that was worth the while around $3, $4, $5. Well, now we're at $7.50. Now we're at $8. We're popping up higher just a moment ago. So this is where we teach you this within the phase 2 stock course as well. So for Chuck, Leda, you got Alicia here joining us today. Take a look. We ended up saying that we had good resistance, a historical area of resistance. Not just one price level to the penny. It's an area, 40-cent range. But I'm expecting that to be very strong resistance. Most important word here, if. Most important word here is if. I certainly did not tell you, kick your feet back. It's guaranteed to happen. But the more this keeps making higher lows and it keeps trying to break resistance, then the hope is to see, at least around here, That looks like a damn good resistance. And I would expect if it goes up that high, if it were to go up that far, then that should, look to hold as resistance. I wouldn't be expecting much more than that even. So we'll see if it has enough power to try and get up that far throughout the day today. But the fact that it's rejecting $8 here, it didn't really reject 5 as much. And not only that, I guess you could say the same thing. I think it was off of, oh no, it was off of 5. So the more it stays off of basically $5 here and stays there, it's not, falling off hard. There is that chance for the next leg. I think this is falling off a little bit more than what we saw here. So, not to say it's done for, just make sure that you keep seeing this try and push back up later on, and then that's it. I wouldn't be interested in buying the stock unless if it were to break above 8 and run. If I can catch the breakout. Otherwise, to try and see if I miss the breakout, then to see resistance flip into support. That would be it. But hey, on this trade, I mean, Bookmap is going to give you the levels, the actual icebergs here. So we haven't even gone back into Bookmap, but notice I was just mainly using 50-cent levels and whole numbers, right? Seemingly got the job done pretty well. Now, I did get in on this trade a bit later on, though. So my one trade on this, it was like 37 or 36 cents on it. It was once it broke over 460 and flipped that into a little support. This thing was an animal throughout the morning. I was focused on HIMS, which we'll get to next. I was also focused in on IVF, and I was focused in on Wolf. Those were my, 3 that I was like very interested in within the pre-market. But to go back to the GPUS, my entry was off of 460. There was just a bit of resistance here and very similar. It's more of a chart level. Wasn't as much like an iceberg. Little CVP sticking out there. I like that part of it. Not as big as this, but hey, if this keeps moving up and if it were to break resistance here, a little chart level there, the goal to try and be and see that flip into support. I took it right away when it first pulled back to 460, went perfect under and over. I got filled exactly at 460. I got out just under 5. So nice it had to do it twice, actually. It went back down and held it a second time. I didn't take it again, though, from there. So my entry is basically just saying, well, there's not really much in terms of icebergs until $5. They moved their order up as high as 530. I could use CVP here around 460. That's sticking out a little bit. I was just basing it also off just little resistance that we had here. So if it's going to go up more, then we got to expect resistance to flip. That's it. So that was my one entry on this trade. I had focused pretty intently on HIMS and Wolf, and I'm in on SoFi right now as well. I want to get to that too, but let me just show this here as well for our students. I mean, I try and give you my playbook here heading into each morning. Sometimes it might be a little tougher if I'm on coaching and pre-market, so I might not be able to provide as lengthy of an explanation or a thought process here. But at least for this morning, I didn't jump in on the GPUS right away because I was focused on HIMS. I told you that. I said normally I don't trade stocks right before they report earnings. Maybe I could have emphasized that this was not a normal situation. I did once we were on the microphone in our room, though. I said HIMS has 61 million shares that are short in the float, and they're expecting a big beat. The company is, the street is, everyone is expecting good news out of this earnings report later today. So my 1 + 1 = 2 mentality leads me to say, I'm expecting a bit of a squeeze at some point today, if not at the open, maybe later on. All right, now real quick, one more time for me, folks, for all of us here. For a stock like HIMS, not a cheap stock, right? It's not Tesla expensive, not Coinbase expensive, but what levels should we be more confident in using for a stock like HIMS? You could say dollar levels. You could. I definitely want you to know you could. But let's go the next step then, right? Let's just make it even sweeter, right? Lynn and Randy, Kerry, Scott, Mike, all saying $5 and $10 levels. Absolutely, right? So obviously it didn't drop that far here, the HIMS trade today. I'm just going to plot this one line at 40. You do have a nice little chart level. Just want to point that out here, like pretty good chart level right around 39.85-ish. Just generally on Friday, it held under 40, under that. 40 is the larger level. And we know that there is a pretty big iceberg that got filled there. How do we know? Well, just look at this giant spike of volume. Not as big as this spike, I guess, but in the grand scheme of breaking over a big level, seeing big buying, seeing an iceberg order getting wiped out, taken out. So that's where we end up seeing resistance at 40 getting broken through. Obviously, the volume bar shows it, green, all this here. Just do this for me if you can. I know you know the answer. What do we nickname green as here in CTU? Green's the color of money, baby. Green's the color of my shirt. What is green? What do we nickname green as? Buying, absolutely. So for as much buying as we had here at 40, it sure looks like it broke resistance. And guess what? It ran, didn't it? What are we expecting resistance to flip into, folks? Now, it actually did it Friday afternoon. It actually did it like, 15 minutes, 10 minutes before the close. That would have been a nice, sweet last second trade to take. But, I was focused this morning, pre-market here. It's flat. I'm saying to myself, okay, obviously I could be wrong in the sense of a short squeeze. I could be wrong in the sense of good earnings beat. I mean, hey, if everyone had the crystal ball, in front of them before they report, right? But that's just where here I'm expecting it to move up. I'm accepting being wrong with that because I have my stop set. If you kick your feet up and don't set your stop, that's on you. That's bad risk management. We need to make sure that we have our seatbelt on as soon as we, jump in that car. And I bring it up very similar to our students in class. We teach this when it comes to risk management. Let's say you go out later to the steakhouse, nice little dinner with your family. You got the kids, you got the missus, you got the grandkids there. I can't imagine that you would not be, having them put their seatbelts on, right? You'd be having them put their seatbelts on immediately before you even, pull the car out the driveway, right? Certainly you wouldn't be putting your seatbelt on as you're already 70, 80 miles per hour down the expressway, right? So of course there's always room to be wrong, but that's just where here, by the time the market opened up, it pulled back. I am confident to take the trade and then from there set my stop. So this is on small size, but once it broke below 40, jumped in on 100 shares. Maybe I could have done the options on it, but I'm not really trying to get too risk on. I'm focused more on Bitcoin throughout this week. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Got a lot of my money tied into that. I got a nice trade going off on HIMS right now too. But point being is that for the HIMS trade, or SoFi I should say, but for the HIMS trade here at 40.06, that's my entry. Been in since. And pretty much, thankfully, it hasn't broken a lower low. And actually, make it even sweeter, that little chart level right at 39.85, that actually did flip into support really well here, but I was not focused on that exact price when I did this this morning. So now here, what's next? Well, let's go back to the daily chart because where we talk about historical levels, I think I wrote this to you as well. I wrote this a little bit before Traders Talk. I was on a call with one of our students, Adel, and we were discussing this together here. The HIMS move, but I was seeing this with him on our call at the time. So I wrote this to you about maybe 50 minutes ago. The HIMS trade testing a historical level right around 41.30. When I say area, just kind of give or take 5-10 cents there. Area. I'm not expecting it to hold flawless to the penny. That'd be crazy. But at least the more it keeps knocking on that door and it breaks over resistance, right? It's the same thing that all of us wrote me back just a moment ago on. Alan, Lynn, and Randy, Mike, Scott, Sam, Fred, Debbie, Bob, all of us. Hey, we're looking for support to build after resistance gets broken, right? So let's look at 41.30 area. Why was that even a level? I think this was more, in my opinion, from the weekly chart, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Oh, no. The daily chart. Okay, it's this. So a little chop around here, a little chop. So not like that great in this 4 candle streak here. But I want to point out low back from February 5th, open back from February 7th. It bottomed out there again the next, trading day, which was on a Monday. So it actually bottomed out that Monday even. It ended up topping off here actually on this candle once it broke under it. So is it perfect? No. But is it a level that I see, especially from the run up? Yes. And especially with it being that type of support. So just before at 11:41, I wrote to you right away, it's testing this as a historical. We need to see it flip into support. Wasn't perfect. Maybe you can kind of combine it with like these little tiny peaks here on the chart. Right, that held pretty nicely just a moment ago, but it moved off of it, right? It moved off of it pretty nicely. So even if it were to pull back there later on today, right around 41.30, I'd be looking for support to hold even better. Did really nicely actually at that price in pre-market. Holy shit, I didn't even realize how clean this was in pre-market off that level. That was just the daily chart I was looking at there. We're doing good though on HIMS. Let me ask, is anyone in on this HIMS trade from earlier? I don't want you to jump in right away here because A, 12:30 is not the best time to trade. B, Monday is not the best weekday to be trading, right? So when I say who's in, well, hey, we had a lot of time to jump in from earlier. I'm just asking out of curiosity. So if you are in this trade right now, then at least for right now, just make sure that you keep seeing the resistance levels flip into support because I'm not guaranteeing it's going to run to like 45 going into the call. Perhaps there's a chance with the numbers that come out, it could blast way above it. But at least for right now, the trend is your friend. Give me a moment here. Surprised that this isn't showing the opening print here this morning on the HIMS. Give me a moment here. I want to take a look on time and sales. What was the opening print today on HIMS? That could be a level coming up on this trade. So, uh, ooh, doesn't even show one on my trade station here. That's got to be a delayed print coming in. Give me a moment. Let me do a little investigative work here. Wow. So this obviously is moving back up pretty nicely right now, but where it opened up at, there's likely going to be a big print that popped up on the tape. Let's find out. Might need to go back a little bit here. Let's see. Probably a little bit more. Could have been a delayed print that came in just right around 9:31, 9:32. You could see a giant spike of volume just right there shortly after the open. So give me a moment. I don't want to waste too much time on this if it's not going to like play as nice to me and show me that print, but one more time here. There it is, finally. Jesus. All right, 42.25. 42.25. That's the price. This is where we see this print. It is delayed by 47 seconds. Didn't even show on my book map. I was having a tough time trying to find that. Probably made for bad radio for a moment. But 438,000 share block print got filled right at 42.25. So that is the next upcoming level for this trade. The opening print for not only today, but remember, what day of the week is it? Monday. And why is that important here? Well, that's actually the open price, 42.25, not just for today's daily candle, but that is actually the open price for this week's candle entirely. 42.25 is where that block print came in. So at least for right now, the more it can keep poking this throughout the afternoon, I'd feel better about an eventual break above it and then the flipping into support. That's pretty key. That's pretty key. So let me just do a little Picasso work here, if you don't mind. I'll show you the game plan I'm looking for coming up right now. I mean, hey, in a perfect world where like every trade just crumbled perfectly like this would immediately blow over resistance now and just fly. And then just, if it even wants to pull back, to have it come back down into support later on. But that's just where otherwise I'm probably expecting a little head fake at first, maybe a rejection, and then later on into the afternoon. Because when you see the amount of time that's gone by in between level tests here, or what will be level tests, that's a lot. That's way too much time gone by. I'm expecting resistance here. Maybe a little false breaky and then back down, and then later on, the better move. But we'll see. We'll see what this brings us heading into even the next 20 minutes time. I wanted to go over HIMS though. Again, they have super high short float. There's a lot of people still short on this stock. They have been for a long time, but I'm sure in the last 1 to 2 weeks, some shares had to have been covered here as it started to run. but with their earnings coming out later today, if you have not covered your short position on HIMS, then prepare to get run over. I mean, get off the tracks or prepare to get run over. That's pretty much what this is showing me here. So we'll see what the afternoon brings on HIMS. Now, also this afternoon, just want to slip in, we do have Palantir earnings as well. Palantir, do not forget, because they were basically our trade of the day on Friday, ran up perfectly, nearly up to all-time highs and up to resistance at $125, but ended up seeing it hold pretty nicely. Resistance again in pre-market held here. This is the first test since the pre-market there, and no surprise with as much time that's gone on since it held. As far as Palantir, we know what's been going on with them. We've been saying it pretty much every day of the week as we've been on this, stream and doing the morning and afternoons. I'll say it again because it's exactly the same catchphrase. When one company does a big deal with another company, that's pretty important, right? Shit, just last week, Palantir announced that deal with Google, right? So that alone propelled them even further to these, highs again. But even before that, with NATO, when a company does a deal with not just a company, but a whole country, right? Sovereign nation, perhaps, or even larger, that is where you should expect an even better move. When a company does a deal with freaking NATO, of all things, right? A conglomerate of countries together. This was one of the biggest no-brainer trades of all time. And if you didn't even swing trade it, I know you did pretty well at the day trade, right? You're still able to pick up a small amount of the piece, a small amount of the pie, even day trading it. And if you didn't trade this, again, there's other fish in the sea there for you. But just in terms of 1 + 1 should equal 2, more often than not, it equals 2. That's where for this type of news, it was more expected for this to at least pop back up. Now to have it run back up to 125 as fast as it did, I definitely wasn't expecting that to happen as fast. But once the news came out originally, I think it was on this day, April 11th, gapped up, popped right away, perhaps expect this to flip into support. And it honestly just broke above it and didn't even try. It just ran right over it. So maybe you could even think, all right, it could build support over time. Once that Google deal came out with Palantir, this just kept flying. So as far as me swing trading this, I know Fausto's been killing it on this for a long time. It's tough for me to just jump in right away here. But with it at all-time highs, there is no historical ceiling to work with. I would love to day trade it. I think I can feel very confident with using retests of resistance, reversal time at 10:30, just things that we focus on in our classes to successfully day trade this. But man, this stock went from 90 up to $125 within like a few weeks' time. I feel like there could be more of a slippage than a pop, but obviously this chart's so healthy. The last thing you'd ever want to do is try and short this thing, folks. I know I said with HIMS, there's like 61 million shares in the float. Yeah, I mean, whoever hasn't covered yet, it's about to get run over by a Mack truck. For Palantir, I wouldn't wish shorting this stock upon my worst enemy. All right, that's the last thing that you should ever think about doing, especially with it right at all-time highs. So it's okay to be skeptical behind taking a trade, but obviously if you're thinking, oh, it's not going to break it, oh, it's going to pull back. Again, there's a whole conversation I could have with students, at least from like even the end of 2023, when the markets were slipping just a wee bit. I had students crying recession and, the crash of the market, 1930 style. Kept going up, right? And that's because long term, the trend has been very much up. It is very difficult to go counter trend on a trade that is just ripping upwards. So, point being, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Bill, nice masterpiece right there, my friend. Speaking about Picassos, I sent Bill a little funny chat message a little earlier talking about coloring outside the lines. So that's what he's posting for all of us there in the chat room. Real quick, let's keep going through our agenda. We got 15 more minutes here before we finish up. So we talked about the GPUS. We talked about the earnings ahead for today, at least. Now, keep in mind, we do have earnings all throughout this week. You might not think this is as big of a week because all of the Mag 7s, aside from NVIDIA, are done. That is the furthest thing from true. Today is like one of the biggest earnings days of the entire quarter between Palantir and HIMS together. Those are two of the most talked about, heavily discussed, viral stocks in the market. If you're not on social media, if you're not on Twitter, don't worry. I'm on there for you. I'll tell you firsthand, everyone. Their mother, their grandmother, their grandfather, everyone is talking about HIMS and PLTR. Um, Now, outside of that, I mean, you got a plenty more. Celsius. I killed it on that swing trade. A bunch of us did actually. Michael D joined me on that one. I remember that was a great swing trade that we had, Mike. SMCI, Super Microcomputer, AMD, Rivian, Tempest AI. It's Pelosi stock right there. Upstart. I gotta say that every time. I'm sorry. I gotta say that I always catch myself because it's true. The second she bought Tempest, that thing exploded like 70% in a week. So Tempest, that's Pelosi's trade. Upstart, Uber, Disney, Novo, Teva's pretty big pharmaceutical company. Adderall, I believe they make. Unity Software. Oscar Health is a pretty big name too. They've actually been on a decent run, if I'm not mistaken. OSCR. Didn't like Trump's son get involved with them too? It's from the they started to have a bounce. They were looking good heading into the beginning of this year, but they pulled back, I guess. They could turn out into a good swing trade still, maybe. But point being, you have so much more with earnings outside of just these two today. So keep your eyes peeled for all of these trades here. Carvana, ARM, Bill, Peloton, Coinbase, Shopify, you name it. We're talking about it. Now, outside of that, though, folks, real quick reminder, what else do we have this week? What else is going on this week? Anything else big happening this week, folks? Wendy saying that Billy should teach art lessons. I like that, right? All right, all right, all right. Well, what do we got going on this week, folks? I love Wendy's answer, class. We got the phase 3 stock course lined up this week, Wendy. So great answer. I love that. We got this guy talking. Everyone's favorite person, main event Jerome Powell. This guy's going to be yapping on Wednesday afternoon, and God knows what's going to happen with the stock market on Wednesday afternoon. But that's what we got going on. We got the Fed meeting. Now, I don't know if they're going to lower the rates this month. I think everyone's expecting next month, right? That's at least what I've read up on, what I've been talking to Fausto about with. If they do a sneak and they lower it this week, that would definitely shake things up. I have no prediction as far as what's going to happen on Fed Day. I've learned my lesson that you can't. Don't try. In terms of like leaving the rates unchanged or lowering, that is maybe somewhat easy to like figure out. But as far as the reaction behind the stock market, you can't even try. Don't even think about it. You're gambling because it's not even when the Fed makes the announcement, but it's actually at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time when Powell does his press conference. So you have the actual headline that comes out at 2 o'clock. Then 30 minutes later, Powell's talking. So whatever happens with the market at 2 o'clock, whatever Powell says, he might just wash everything out. It might go the other way immediately afterwards. So as far as predicting what's going to happen, don't. As far as at least the overall trend of the stock market, look how well we've recovered already. Left or right, up or down, politics aside, guys, just look at this reaction, right? We've been shaking a little bit, but we got back up. We haven't really looked too far back since. So even on a bad, reaction with the Fed and we pull back, look for gap fills. Maybe in a worst case scenario, you could see this gap get filled here, 530-ish in a worst case scenario. But as far as looking for a longer term move, I'm expecting to go back up over time. Now, I had a thought. I have people I follow myself macro wise, and they were very bullish on SPX to eventually get to 7,000. Give a quick shout out to David Hunter, contrarian trader. He's the first one to kind of be on top of that. I've been on pretty much since like reading his posts, but obviously that hasn't happened yet. There's room for pullbacks. There's room for recession where the market pulls back 15%, 10%, if not more. So we've recovered. We've done a great job since. And I think that we're eventually going to keep pushing up. So that's my overall thought process, at least with the SPY in the long term there. Let's just jump right back to email because I think Kerry asked a great question I want to get to, and Francis as well, one of our new members joining us here as well here, and get to them before we finish up. All right. Kerry, here we go. Carrie was really happy to sit in on the intermediate classes that we taught from last week, the phase 2 stock course. So Carrie, thank you very much for joining us. That was like a very limited, offering for just any of our, bronze students, phase 1 students looking to kind of dip their feet into those intermediate classes. We hope to have you there coming up for next month, even as we head into May. But with that, though, Carrie was asking, hey, for Traders Talk, can you go over your process for deciding on a swing trade? You always seem to nail them, and I'm sure, would really like to see and hear you walk yourself through the decision to swing a stock. I will tell you straight up right now, I'm getting a lot better over the last 2 years, 3 years with my swing trades in terms of patience and holding on. Great entries, but a lot of times my day trading brain meshes. It combines with my swing trading brain, and I become too impatient. So a lot of times I'll let trades go up higher without me. I'll take the profit sooner. I've been getting a lot better at that the last 2 to 3 years. So a bunch of trades I've nailed this year so far. TKO is a great swing trade that we had from the end of last year into this year that I called out. Philip Morris, maybe I shouldn't have gotten out, but that was a great swing from 119 up to 145. Celsius was a really good trade eventually. It was right place, wrong time at first. Then myself and Michael, a few of us took this at least afterwards, moved up pretty nice. I want to let you know, though, Fausto has been doing this a hell of a lot longer than me. I appreciate the kind words, Carrie, and I'm very happy to give you my thought right now, right? That's the whole point of this. But I'd be remiss if I'd say that, hey, ask Fausto the next time he does the morning meeting as well. And ask him in phase 3 class, even coming up Tuesday and Wednesday this week, because he'll have the chance to break that down for you. And he's been doing this for 35 plus years. And, he has a lot better intuition with the long-term moves there. So, the key with swing trading is look for swing levels. So that's where I focus a hell of a lot more on the historical chart comparative to the teeny tiny 1 minute chart. I can't base a swing trade off of Celsius looking at this, 3-day pattern, because there's a hell of a lot more charting that's gone on since, or more than the last 3 days. So at least using this as an example, right? Just going to use this as a one-off. Well, we had such, a nice run up here, but this actually had super clean level right around 26.75. It was like basically 26.75, $27, and it ran up from there. All right, well, over time it crashed. It broke below this support, tanking. I found this stock basically because there was someone on social media had like 300,000 followers and kept telling people, "Oh, it's a good buy here. Oh, it's a good buy here. Oh, it's a good buy here. It's going to go back up for sure, right?" It's like, guy, come on, you're misleading hundreds of thousands of people, right? You're just kind of an attention, you know what. So that's where I wanted to take this trade to kind of spite that dude, to kind of just be like, hey, I'll do this in one trade. I'll do this in one shot here, one and done. And it's all based off of historical levels. But I will mention, I did not do this one and done. I took a small loss at first, and then I got the better move. But that comes with trading. There's always imperfection involved. So what happens here, Carrie, was I was waiting for the earnings to come out. They had blowout earnings. They popped like 35% on one day. So there was a catalyst. I think they raised guidance, all the good stuff that you'd want to see out of earnings. So I felt good with the catalyst that, hey, eventually this should go back up now. There's a real reason there, right? Not a guarantee, but now the question is from where? So I waited for this to pull back and I thought it would go up faster. It didn't. So I got in and I eventually got out and took a bit of a loss at first. And I didn't take my eyes off of it. So I didn't mind taking the loss, but got to make sure this gets back over this level. And it eventually did here. I think it was pretty much on the next day I jumped back in because once it ended up closing on the daily chart above this level, became a lot easier to anticipate higher lows, try and actually run off of it. So, case in point, too long didn't read version of this. Wait for the close above your level. It's not even just looking at your historical levels, but it's a matter of seeing, hey, are we going to have a green, candle, a big close back over it? Because seemingly once it did here, it was holding support a lot better. It's not flawless. It's not going to be picture perfect, but good enough, and certainly good enough to make the run that it made. I ended up getting out on this one around 35. I think it was like 34.70-ish, 35 or so, just because I think, or maybe it was even like 35.70. Just I ended up seeing good resistance. Yeah, kind of right around here. Pretty decent. So it was as it was pushing up, just take the profit and run. But otherwise, though, the key with this is not just looking at longer charts, more historical charts to gauge, where your cleaner levels really are. But it's a matter of seeing actually, hey, is it closing over that level? Breaks under, break back over. Is it going to look to actually hold that thereafter? I could definitely talk to you about it a lot further, Kerry, just in phase two, phase three. You can private chat me. Hey, private chat me later on today. I have no problem working with you on the side in the private chat, box there. Let's go really quickly to Francis here. Francis, well, I'll tell you what, I hope Francis is joining us live. So we'll try and have one of our staff members, just education advisors after the market close, look to set you up with a watch list and book map. But, here in Traders Talk, this gives you the best chance for me to go over this with you. So I saw this question from Francis just earlier, one of our new members, Francesca, I'm going to say. After the close, could someone show me how to set up the watch list and get Bookmap? So I'll just make it known with Bookmap, right? Bookmap is the heat map program. We love working with them. Quick shout out to the fine folks at Bookmap, Bruce, Dan, and all of them over there. But otherwise, though, Bookmap, I would not suggest to get until you go through our classes. So, Francesca, let's just say if you're a trial member testing our room app for the week, definitely wait on that. We don't want you to spend money on something that you're not fully 100% sold on. This is a great tool to use, and we want you to get it after you take our classes. Now, if you're a new student of ours, if you're a gold student of ours, we'll absolutely have one of our education advisors reach out to you, give you a call coming up later on today. They'll get you set up. But I'll mention at least Think or Swim, the platform, Think or Swim, has this program literally built into the platform. So that's something we would talk to you about on the side there. Now, as far as setting up the watch lists, that more or less is just based off of the gainers and losers lists that we have. So as far as seeing like right here, God, my eyes are really bad. Hot list. There we go. Took long enough to find that. So right here, you can see the gainers list, percent gainers one day. This is what we're using pretty much in the mornings heading into the, market open. So for the stocks that are up the most, we're going to kind of just turn over to, and, we'll scratch our head, say, wow, it's up a lot. Why is this up so much? You want to make sure there's a good catalyst. You want to make sure there's a proper, trend upward to start. But from there, though, we focus not just on percent change, like the gainers and the losers list here from your platform, but we have our criteria. So we need to make sure the stock is trading enough volume. We need to make sure the stock is within our price range. Not everyone here is working on the same price range for stocks that they're scanning for. If you're on a $2 million account, you're probably trading AMD, NVIDIA, Coinbase, etc. If you're on a $10,000, $15,000 account, you should not be doing that because you're probably providing way too much percent of your account into one position. So that's where you'd want to trade something with, a smaller price on it. It doesn't even need to be like a $2 stock. It could be like a $10 stock. Look at this thing go, right? So just using this as an example, this is number 9 on the gainers list. So I say, all right, that looks good. I look at the trend, like, wow, it's up, it's trending well. If there's a catalyst, perfect. If not, the next step at least would be to say, what does the volume look like? So looking at the order book here, looking at level 3 on my platform, TradeStation, this has a penny spread, a tight spread between where the buyers are looking to buy and where the sellers are looking to sell. So case in point, this is a tradable stock. It's up a lot. It is trending up well. This has all the makings to be a stock that we would call out normally in a morning session for us or afternoon, either way. But we teach this all throughout the phase 1 stock course there, Francesca. I do a whole class on scanning the market, building your watch list, not just that, but making sure that you're keeping yourself grounded with stocks that you're more comfortable trading. This is a little easier on the eyes. It's not flying up and down like no other. It's not like GPUS that, is shaking down here about $1.50 within about 2 or 3 minutes. Is this going up? It is. But just because it's going up doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean it's like, oh, that's a tradable stock. If you're brand new to our strategy, this type of stock is like stepping into a batting cage and you're having like a 105-mile-per-hour fastball being tossed at you. If you're not successful already with hitting a 105-mile-per-hour fastball, probably learn how to hit a 90-mile-per-hour pitch first. And if you've never even stepped into the batting cage to hit that type of ball ever, then you're probably going to get blown away with how fast it looks at first, right? Like even right now, look what just happened. Nasty drop. But hey, if we want this to move up later on today, remember what we said. This needs to not only nip and test resistance, it needs to break above it, and notably, it needs to stay over it. So this will be a pretty telling point right now as we're finishing up right here, because if it just lays under this here and then just keeps dropping, that's it. Game over. In the coming minutes, if this can get back over 8, and if it stays over 8, if it plays as nice as it did earlier, then that would be your trigger to try and expect the next leg. But otherwise, though, that's easy for me to tell you. As a brand new trader of CTU, even if you have a lot of experience, perhaps as an investor, long-term trader, if this is your first go around with this type of volatility, you are going to find it a lot easier to make money and just follow along and gain confidence with knowing what to look for by following stocks that are just a little bit slower. It's not really so much the shiny object in the room. This was a dud from earlier today, but from Friday, this was like one of our best trades all of last week. Probably about like 10, 12 of us killed it on this trade immediately heading into the afternoon because it's tradable, right? So you don't need to focus on the shiny object in the room to try and make money. More often than not, you're not going to gain confidence, at least at first. You want to put the training wheels on initially and then incrementally say, all right, well, hey, I've been doing really good on these stocks. Let me challenge myself. Let me go up a notch here. So that's the best way to go about like progressing, at least with day trading. Now, real quick, speaking of which, give me a moment here. We're going to finish up, folks, in just a moment here. Right now, it looks like my HIMS trade's pulling back a little bit, so just want to be mindful of this heading into the afternoon myself. Look at this big-ass drop. Look what just happened here. What the hell just happened? Well, we had that historical level, didn't we? Or not even the historical, pardon me. We had the open price. It was the open price right here, right? It was holding resistance. It was chipping away, chipping away. It didn't break out. It didn't run. So it needed to stay here. Rejected bad. So now the question will be for me on my position, can we still see higher lows build? Can we still see higher lows look to build throughout the day? So this is nasty. But if it breaks below this, I'll look to just jump out of my trade, just wipe my hands clean. It's not big size to start, but I'd rather get out with a profit than no profit. So we'll see what happens heading into this afternoon, at least on HIMS. All right, Dave, quick shout out to you, one of our longtime students joining us on the YouTubes here this afternoon. But otherwise, folks, we are going to wrap up. For any of our students here that I did not have the chance to go through their questions with, I'm going to just chat you on the side. I'll write you back through email otherwise. Feel more than free to send over any other questions, especially if you're on social media. I always like to post my email here at the end anyway, josh@ctutrading.com. For any of our members on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, I guess TikTok too. I don't do dances, but we're on TikTok. Josh@ctutrading.com is the email. Feel more than free to send over any other follow-up questions for myself. Otherwise, if you're interested in joining us inside our live trading room, just go right down to the link scrolling on the bottom in blue. You'll see it there coming up. ctu.co/trial. That'll get you access to our live trading room on a week-long trial membership. Join all of our students and members there right now. I got Mitchell, I got Kathleen, Fred, Margaret, Genevieve, Alicia, Brian V. A bunch of us just joining us right now. In fact, I see a total number is at 180. I see 180 of us inside our live trading room currently here. So, hey, if you're looking to join us inside our room, just go right down to the link on the banner below. I'll be back later on today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. We do the afternoon meeting streams now also on YouTube. So feel more than free to just hit the follow or subscribe button at the least there. At Cyber Trading U, popping up right there. Feel free to hit the follow or subscribe button below. And we'll be back, folks. For all of us inside the live trading room, stay tuned. I'll keep you posted on this HIMS trade. That's for damn sure. I'll let you know if this ends up breaking below this support line or not. And we'll see what happens heading into the end of the day. I'll talk to everybody soon.